All right, welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond. I'm so excited for today's episode. I believe this will be episode 49, so I'm getting close to that 50 mark, and I just want to take a moment before I, introduce my guests and just say I appreciate all of you guys' support and all of you guys just rallying around the initiative of having this podcast and the work that I've been doing. I would not be able to do it without you guys and provide this space for not only, foster youth and alumni and people with lived experience, but also the stakeholders surrounding the child welfare arena. So thank you. Without further ado, because you guys know I could talk, I'm going to have my guest introduce herself. I'm so excited and I'm honored and privileged to have her. So go right ahead.
Hi, thank you, Michael. I'm Jamerika Haynes-Lewis. I'm USA Ambassador Ms. 2021 through the USA Ambassador Pageant. My platform is A Chance to Succeed, Empowering Youth in Foster Care. I am from the state of Washington. And what has led to me doing this work was my own personal experience of growing up in the foster care and child welfare system, and just wanting to share my experiences and advocate for change so that children and families could be best served in the system, as well as allowing them to go out into their respective communities and be able to thrive. And so that is a lot of what drives the work that I do now as a National Queen, Michael.
Wow. I just want to take a moment and say it's such a privilege, and it speaks to your resilience and perseverance, on being able to hold that title, but also being able to do the work to obtain it, I'm sure. So my first question is, if you can give me a little bit of where did this start for you? And where did this begin? First, your experience to whatever ability that you're comfortable sharing, whether that be starting at your expertise or what have you.
For me, I have always wanted to be a communicator in some shape, form, or fashion. I remember one time a foster parent had asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was about 10 years old and I proudly proclaimed an actress. I want to be an actress. And the expression on her face was that of someone who thought that was such a far-fetched idea. But even in my mind as a child, I just had this vision of standing on stage, connecting with people and speaking with them, whether that was through a performing art or through motivational speaking. That is where I saw my place in the world. And that was a vision that I held to my heart as I grew up. I had the opportunity to be on stage as a clarinet player and band, doing drama club, or doing presentations, whether that was for a class presentation or later on when I began to do more public speaking. So it made a lot of sense to me. And having gone through the system and being able to process that experience, what I wanted to be able to do was take out the shame of being in the system. Over the years, I believe, especially in our society, there's such a huge stigma of being dependent on social services, whether it's welfare, having to go through foster care, or even being on Social Security, right? There's very much this idea that you need to take care of yourself. And so between experiencing that on a personal level, being system dependent, as well as having this need to pursue this dream of being on stage, I just felt as though I found this calling to be able to help other people and spread awareness about what people need to thrive in our society, right? We shouldn't shame people when they need help, but it's also important that we don't abandon people during their life journey, that they feel a part of their community, right? That they're not just there receiving services, but that they actually feel like full-on included members of their community.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
You're dropping a lot of nuggets for me in my mind. I'm just like, wow.
Yes.
That's not something that we talk about a lot, is
No.
that system dependency, and the aspect that it becomes almost a social norm for people coming out of foster care or coming into foster care, that they're going to, need food assistance. They're going to be on disability or what have you.
Yes.
And it's almost, you have to fight that and combat that to make it whatever you want it to be, and also there's this narrative that even if you do, momentarily, say for instance, you're going through college and you need to utilize food assistance or what have you, there's this stigma that, that's an issue, and what have you. So I appreciate you uplifting that,
Yeah.
and speaking to your truth on your experience, and combating that and stepping into a different light and wanting to pursue, a dream, so if you don't mind me asking, because I'm interested in this dream, after your experience and pursuing, what barriers and did you, let me formulate my question a little bit better. What barriers and obstacles came along the way that you had to overcome to get to this place where you are now?
I think for some people, when you talk about pursuing a career that's entrepreneurial in the arts, a lot of people tend to think about the instability or the work and effort it takes to create something like that. And for me, it was hard. A lot of people go, you need to get a full-time job, then work on this as a side business. And as you know, with all your projects and different work that you're doing, Michael, you have to invest accordingly, right? And it can't be just a little bit or just what's left over from whatever you're doing. Sometimes you have to make sacrifices.
Yeah.
In order to achieve your dreams, right? And that's the same thing for if you're pursuing traditional full-time work, right? You're spending 40 hours a week at a place of employment, giving of yourself, working with the team. That requires your focus. You can't be trying to do other things if this 40-hour week job is demanding your time. So whether people acknowledge it or not, both require sacrifice. What it comes down to is what people value and what they feel as though is attainable. And that's where you really have to believe in yourself. And I feel that's how you overcome those barriers. Also, too, being able to plan accordingly, having mentors, talking to other people who have done what you have done, right? As you know, a lot of variables go into success. But for me, wanting to win a national pageant title, it was a dream, but it was a lot of work that required planning, and also to me putting in that investment of work. Many women, and even men, for those who compete in male pageants, you have to put in that work. And I was willing to do that. And not only that, I found people who believed in me. It wasn't enough for people to help me or for me to waste my time trying to convince people why this was a worthy cause. And so those are some of the ways that I felt as though I was able to overcome those barriers to success.
Definitely. And it hits, for me, it hits personal, because as we spoke before, before starting the recording, I told you a little bit of what I'm doing, with this podcast and just being able to build financial stability and equity for myself as a foster care alumni, as a person with lived experience. That means so much to me, to be in a place of security and stability in society. And, I'm sure you've had your moments, and what have you, where you're like, man, I'm pursuing this dream, I'm pursuing this dream, and I can see it. I can see it, and this is where I'm trying to go. As you had spoke about, having that team, having having the right mindset too,
Yes, right.
um, having the right mindset for your dream, because you can't, when you're pursuing something entrepreneurial, and I probably butchered that word, but in the arts and what have you, it's almost as, people look at you like, what are you doing? That's not normal, but also you got to switch that mindset of listening to what everybody else have to say and what your vision is for yourself, and that's why I, hear you speaking upon my next question, because you kind of touched on it. What did support look like for you, pursuing this dream and being in this dream?
Well, for me, it started with me. I couldn't ask other people for their buy-in if I didn't absolutely believe in it or wasn't on fire for it. So it really started with me. And that was the most scariest thing, because I had attempted before to win titles and what hadn't been successful. I mean, I had been competing for over 10 years, had already competed for an additional 4 times, didn't place the first 2 times, received a first runner-up placement twice, which is hard, right? Because that's basically second place. And it was like, if I'm going to do this, I have to believe in myself. And I can't believe in myself, 99%. I have to believe in myself 100+%.
Mhm.
And some more. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so once I got to that point, I felt as though I was able to find those fellow advocates who not only believed in me, but were also able to share their expertise with me to help me get to that next level. And so that is what support looked like to me. And for me, I told everybody what I was doing. And basically that allowed me to cast a wide net for support. It may have been a minority of people who I feel as though I was able to recruit on my team, but it was pivotal. And sometimes it may only have been 5 people, but either those people had won a title themselves, they believed in me, and they were willing to help me, as well as hold me accountable, but also listen to me. This time when I competed, Michael, I had a vision for not just winning this title, but what I wanted that journey to look like. And it was so important that the people that I had surrounded me understood that and were willing to support me, that I was the one in the driver's seat.
Wow. Support is a big thing, in anything that you do, but nonetheless, when you are pursuing something that is close to your heart and that you have worked so much, so hard, and you've been at that place where you like, I've come so close, and just having undoubtedly support and having that authentic circle that's there for you. I can only imagine, how that meant, you know. My next question is, we talk about mental health, we talk about self-care, we talk about these things in society, and there's some different narratives, there's some stigmas, some labels pushed upon it, whether culturally or society-wise. But pursuing this as a dream, as I'm gonna use the word career, what did that look like for you, for self-care and pushing towards this?
I believe a huge part of self-care is knowing that it's okay to take a break. By taking a break, you're not missing out. You're allowing yourself to recharge and really go back to the drawing board once you're ready to do that. I believe there's such a pressure to keep going, to max out your time, to not let your talents go to waste, to not let connections, go by the wayside. And I believe it's really important to be able to just to stand still and go, I'm just going to stand still. Like, I don't have to work on this today, or it's okay to take a break. And I think especially when times of crisis happen, when people experience adversity, I believe it's really tempting just to give yourself this abnormally short time to get over something and then get to the next thing. I think especially in our day and age where we live in such a 24-hour life cycle, where things are open all the time and people are working crazy hours, they feel this need to just get back and grind. And really, you have to give yourself a chance to process things, especially when you go through hard times, but especially when you go through good times. I believe it's good to be able to have that space and time to process what's happening.
Wow.
We're not machines. I mean, even a machine needs a break, you know what I mean? Or else burn out. So I believe that's my approach to self-care.
Right. And it's so powerful because I'm in a actively working space within myself, in this journey of, taking care of self, and making sure that I also am putting in the time for my dreams and my ambitions.
Yeah.
I'm doing this podcast is very is what's the word I'm looking for? Self-produced. That requires time and effort, handling social media and all these different things, going into it. And I have to remind myself daily, remember to do this, take that time, it's great to push. It's great to strive towards that dream, to strive towards that mark. But also don't forget, self matters too, and that's a lesson that I've learned, and I'm glad to say I've honed in, by listening to people like yourself and following behind, and other alumni that I've seen, produce their own, businesses and nonprofits and what have you. So it's very powerful for me to hear, your experience and your story chasing and succeeding at achieving a dream that's so close to you. My next question is, what does it mean to you, if you don't mind me asking, as an African-American woman, being a role model, and being someone who have achieved something that they have worked so hard at, and succeeded and pressed the mark?
It means a lot to me. What it means to me is that I have a responsibility to not only live a morally correct life where I treat people with respect and I am a good person, but to me, it also means that I do have a responsibility to be mindful of how I conduct myself. In my pageant system, we have younger age divisions. Some of our contestants are 4 years old. And I know that they are looking up to us, older contestants and queens, for an example. And that is a very powerful position to be in and something not to take for granted. I always think it's interesting when people say, I'm not a role model. And it's like, well, whether or not you want to be, when you are in a public position, if you're a public figure that people look up to by default, that does make you a role model, and you'll be emulated for better or worse. And I know for myself, when I was growing up, I looked for those role models. I know for me, I'm a huge fan of Selena, but when I became a fan, I was a little girl and I liked her music. But as I became a young woman, I really admired her because she was a hard worker. She was family oriented. She was a businesswoman. She believed in education. And that's what I wanted to be. I felt that was something that was worthwhile. And with her being a woman of color, I also felt it was obtainable. So I feel that being in this position and being a role model, it's a good thing because I know personally the benefits of someone who is a healthy role model. And that is something I feel very comfortable doing.
Thank you for sharing that. Man, I only have a couple more questions for you.
Okay.
And before I get to my last couple questions, this question is about COVID. It has affected everybody in many different ways. What has that looked like for you and your work? And how have you had to adjust or adapt to, you know?
Well, when COVID struck, we actually ended up postponing the pageant for one additional year. And to me, it was a little shocking, but at the same time, I valued health and I wanted everyone to be healthy. So I didn't mind waiting an extra year to compete. If anything, I took it as an opportunity to have another year to prepare. So for an additional 52 weeks, I continued doing my weekly mock interviews, making sure that the wardrobe that I wanted for the pageant looked good, making sure that I stayed up to date with current events, continuing to volunteer in my community. And one thing that I would do as a mental exercise is think in the end. And what I envisioned myself doing was giving away my title. I give away my title at the end of July this year. But when the pageant had been postponed, I knew that if I won the title, I technically would be giving away my title in 2 years. But even with that duration on the horizon, I asked myself, when I'm standing on stage and I'm crowning the next woman, what feeling do I want to have? Do I want it to be a feeling of sadness because it's over and I had to wait an extra year to win? Or do I want it to be one of accomplishment in which I not only won this title, but I used this title for good, to bring awareness to the needs of children and families who go through the system, who are labeled, stigmatized, and basically cast aside of the margins. What do I want to have accomplished by then? And that is what kept me motivated, not only to get through that year, but to truly be prepared for that title if I was crowned.
Thank you for sharing that. My next question is, what has your advocacy and your message, what has that been throughout this duration of you holding your title, and how important has that been to you?
Well, as the title of the show says, you are not your circumstances. A good friend of mine, Donna, she told me that as I was not only going through the beginning stages of my advocacy, but while I was still processing my own experiences of having gone through care. Unfortunately, I had faced ridicule and misunderstanding from people about what it meant to be in the system. And even though I had began advocacy work, there was a lot of shame that I still had about having to go through the system. And one thing she told me was that you are not your circumstances. And that's something that I tell people, is that you can go on to live a happy and fulfilled life. And people in our community, they need more than just services and support. They need to know they are valued, that they're included, that they're seen, and that they're advocated for. I think especially when you come from a group of people that have been discriminated against, it gets exhausting always having to advocate for yourself. That's a huge part of the awareness in the work that I do, is letting people know This is what other people experience. And if you are able to advocate for them, right? Whether that's ensuring that there's still reduced and free breakfast and lunch and programs. No, your child may not need it, but their classmate might. And truthfully, if you were to go through a crisis, you too may need it one day.
Mm-hmm.
Things like maternal health and, paternity and maternity leave, you may be able to stay at home for years on end, but for someone who has to work and maybe a single parent, being able to have that paid maternity leave is a godsend. So when I talk about supporting children and families, it's not just those who find themselves with dependency cases in the child welfare system. It's really making sure that policies that are created for families are enacted and enforced. And so that has what this advocacy journey has meant to me. It has not always been easy, especially now being a grown-up and out of the system. It's important that people realize the life trajectory of youth who go through care. It's not just the little kids. Yes, they need help, but it's also the bigger kids and the young adults, and making sure that they have what they need as well.
Wow. Thank you for that.
Welcome.
I'm just, thinking about, all that you are dropping and all the knowledge and I like to call them nuggets or tidbits, and I just, it's awing to hear, the aspect of holistic advocacy when it comes to child welfare and children and family. You don't hear that too much where we're speaking about the holistic point of view. It's not just the component of, well, this person has ended up in the system, due to abuse or neglect. Let's look at the outside of it, the preventative services, the resources too,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that they are maintained. So realistically, the inevitable or what unfortunately happens very, very too often, the child is placed in care, because if we establish a ground, and I want to make sure I say this clearly, if we establish a ground-based system that supports and provide resources and aid with prevention and have stable policies that are instilled, like free lunch programs, like supportive maternity leave, different things to help and support community of young parents, even resources towards people who are family members to people who utilize substances and stuff like that, people who are experiencing homelessness or instability in housing. It's so important, and I appreciate that. My last question here is, what advice do you have for anyone that is interested in pursuing pageantry? And also, what advice do you have for more specifically youth and young adults with lived experience?
For those who'd like to pursue pageantry, I would say do your research. One site that I really liked was Pageant Planet. They really go in depth to what it means to compete, whether it's choosing a platform or knowing what to wear, mock interviews. It's really important to know what it all entails, what you want from it, but also to what legacy you want to leave in pageantry. I think it's important to know all of those things and to talk to other people in the industry, whether it's contestants, queens, makeup artists, judges, just anyone. Just learn as much as you can. And as I said, know what you want to get out of it. And really, it's a place where you have to be true to yourself and be real, especially now these days. I would say for young people in the system or for alumni of care, you know what you need. And sometimes it can be tempting to want to do what others tell you to do, whether because it's easier or because you want to please them. But it's really important to know you have needs, you have hopes and dreams, and to really acknowledge that and surround yourself with people who not only believe in you, but who can tangibly help you. I think those things are so, so important, and that it's okay to set boundaries. I think a lot of times, we may just accept help because it's there, but if it's something that you don't need, it's okay to tell that person, no, thank you. And if they truly care about you, they'll respect that about you.
Wow. I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for being on. Truly, I appreciate it. And I am honored to have this time to have spoken to you and to got, a bit of your experience and to hear about the journey and your expertise. It is a privilege and an honor. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any last comments that you would like to leave here today?
I want to just say thank you, Michael, for giving me this platform to share my story. And for folks who want to follow me online, I'm on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm there. And I also have my own website, which I know you'll share, but that's a way for people to stay in contact. And just, if you can, be a voice and advocate for those who are going through the system, and especially for children and families. They really are the building blocks of society. And it's so important that we uplift our families every day, no matter who they are or where they're from. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you. You guys know, as I end out, it's the same old spiel. COVID is out there. It is doing its thing. There, even we're even hearing things about monkeypox. So please stay safe. Take the proper precautions to protect yourself and protect your village. It takes all of us to stay healthy. It's not just a one person kind of thing. It takes all of us to be conscious and to stay healthy. So make sure that you're doing what you need to do to make sure that you're safe and you're stable. Also, we touched on a couple different things that regarding mental health, and you guys know from listening to some of my episodes that it's really important to me to change the narrative and break those stigmas surrounding around it. If you need support, if you know someone that's actively in crisis or needs support, seek out those resources, have those conversations, start those dialogues. And lastly, I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate it. It's kind of bittersweet as I'm getting close to the end of season 1. And I never in a million years would have thought that I would have, started a podcast, nonetheless be 49 episodes into a podcast. So I just want to thank you guys for your support. Thank you to all the guests who have been on here. Thank you for being on here today. I truly appreciate it. And this is only the beginning. So with that being said, you guys have a great night, great morning, great whenever you listening to this. Just let it be great. And this has been Resilient Voices and Beyond. Thank you.